At this dramatic Munich Security Conference, we're joined now by the Foreign Minister of the Philippines, Enrique Manalo. Very many thanks for speaking to DW, Minister Manalo. So you're here in Europe, of course, and all of the excitement and the tension at this Munich Security Conference has been really about fights between the United States and Europe. There's a sense that these two continents are kind of inhabiting different planets at the moment. I mean, the Philippines is also a long-time ally of the United States, and it's also getting closer to the Europeans. So how do you feel about this fight going on between your friends?
Well, as you mentioned, first let me thank you for having me here. A great pleasure to be here. And certainly, as you rightly mentioned, the United States is a treaty ally of the Philippines. We've been partners and friends for hundreds of years. And the EU itself is also a long-term partner of the Philippines. So we're quite close to both. And certainly our hope is that whatever difference happen or emerge, they can resolve them in a way that promotes peace and stability in the world.
I mean, you've been talking to people here. There's a sense among a lot of Europeans that this has been some kind of historical turning point where, the two continents are moving apart. Is that a feeling that you get?
Well, I wouldn't say so. I think this is only natural. Probably of course, in the United States, you have a new administration, their ideas. But I think maybe, hopefully, as time goes on, they'll be able to find ways where they can accommodate whatever differences they might have.
I mean, of course, the big security issue here is the war in Ukraine, which has been dragging on for 3 years. The Trump administration is coming in saying that it wants to make a rapid move towards peace. There's worry among the Ukrainians and the Europeans that this could be hasty, that it might be a peace that really benefits Vladimir Putin. How important is the kind of peace that is arrived at in Ukraine to the Indo-Pacific region, to the Philippines? Obviously, in Asia, the concern is for some, about a precedent being set that if Vladimir Putin walks away from this war, with a favorable settlement, that could be a precedent that could encourage conflicts in Asia. For instance, Xi Jinping might think, I wouldn't have really any problem taking over Taiwan.
Well, let me say two things. First, the Philippines has consistently supported all of the General Assembly resolutions on Ukraine ever since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And the main premise of our support has been our commitment and the importance and adherence to international law and rules-based order, for example, the UN Charter. At the same time, the Ukrainian conflict has also directly affected countries such as the Philippines, especially in the economic area. For example, initially through rise in fertilizer prices affecting food security. So even though the Philippines is in another region, the conflict has directly affected us in many ways. So we have always supported any move aimed at least, if not first a ceasefire, but eventually to reach some kind of a peace settlement, because our concerns are not only on the great humanitarian catastrophe, but the danger that the conflict, if it continues, the danger of escalation in many ways. So we have always been very supportive, but we do understand that any peaceful solution would have to take into account the concerns and the interests of the parties. And both have to be satisfied, and I think that's the real challenge. But I just want to go back to my main point, is that we will support any effort which is aimed about bringing peace in the way that we can. But naturally, we don't think that this will be something very easy, and it's something that I think will require some great patience and negotiation. But we are very supportive of any effort aimed at
I mean, the signals from the Trump administration seem to be no NATO membership for Ukraine, so Ukraine is denied the right to choose its own alliances, and that Ukraine will have to, at least de facto, accept a loss of territory. I mean, these would be pretty grave breaches of Ukraine's rights. Would they be disappointing to you?
Well, I think the issue of course, membership in NATO, I think this is an issue that has to be decided amongst the countries concerned. we feel that they would be in a better position to determine the consequences and the benefits of such a decision. And so we would support any decision which is acceptable to the EU, the Ukraine, and the countries concerned.
Now, you've seen how the Trump administration has been pretty aggressive towards its allies within NATO over the last few weeks and here this weekend. Does this give you pause to think, might you be on the receiving end of similar treatment from the Trump administration also as a treaty ally?
Well, we have already had a couple of discussions at high level. I've met my counterpart, Secretary Rubio. The President has spoken. President Marcos has spoken with President Trump. Our Defense Secretary has met his counterpart, and as well as our national security advisors. And the feedback we get is that the American commitment to the Philippines and to our general area in the Indo-Pacific remains firm. And the commitment has been also confirmed. In fact, in yesterday's talk with Secretary Rubio, we explored ways in which the Philippines and the United States could, in fact, increase our cooperation and strengthen our alliance. So I think we are basing our understanding and our policy outlook for the years ahead on the basis of what is actually said and not on speculation.
And of course, for the Philippines, I mean, you're really on the front lines of the kind of tensions with China that we're seeing in various parts of Asia at the moment. And, you know, of course, those tensions being an aspect of the relationship with the US. China has been provoking the Philippines in the South China Sea in the last year or two. President Marcos has warned against the prospect that an incident in which, say, a Filipino service member loses their lives, that this could spiral into a conflict. I mean, how close have we been to that kind of scenario?
Well, tensions have been on the rise. They have their ebbs and flows, but they've been on the rise. It's always there, and the danger is any incident in the region could develop into not only higher tensions, but even into some form of conflict. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. That's why the importance of seeing how we can manage whatever incidents arise so that the tensions do not increase. And of course, the situation in the South China Sea is quite complex. So it requires almost a constant monitoring of the situation and really to see how we can avoid any escalation of tensions in the region. That's why every time an incident happens, we have to try and find ways to diffuse the situation. But it's not always that easy, but we have to try.
And there is that alliance with the United States, which essentially provides this backstop. Yeah, that if something did escalate, do you feel that the U.S. have your backs?
Well, the United States has said that on many occasions, and as I
and you're feeling that from the current administration too.
Well, they have reaffirmed their commitment to the Philippines, our alliance, our partnership, and even to the Indo-Pacific region. So I think you just have to believe that the situation will continue, that our partnership will continue, and we are already looking at possible ways of strengthening it. So I think that's already a very good sign.
I mean, your counterpart is Marco Rubio. I mean, he's made a career in the Senate out of being perhaps the most hawkish senator in the whole U.S. Senate with respect to China. Do you share his approach towards China? He sees it as really the gravest threat to the United States that it's had in generations.
Well, in my discussions with Secretary Rubio, it's really been focused on how we can strengthen our bilateral relationship. And I think it's clear that we're not only going to cooperate because we want to have a front against China. I think the whole idea is the Philippines and the U.S. share many interests dating back to 100 years or more. And I think these are the interests that we want to build on. And so it's really focused on how the Philippines and the U.S. can work together. And not because of certain countries in the region, etc. It's really based on the mutual interests of the U.S. and the Philippines.
I mean, people have been kind of trying to decode the actions of the Trump administration so far, and a couple of them have been very much in the pattern of the first administration, this idea of America first. So a skepticism about multilateral diplomacy and, first and foremost, pulling out for a second time of the Paris climate change agreement. What's your perspective on that?
Well, whatever decision the United States makes, of course, is its sovereign right. So we have to respect that. But I think other countries, I believe, for example, the Philippines, we still believe in the importance of multilateralism, especially in terms of addressing issues such as climate change and natural disasters, health pandemics. And I think it's important for like-minded countries to continue their cooperation with each other, whether in a multilateral, trilateral, or a minilateral or bilateral way. And of course, we respect the decision of any country if they wish to find other approaches.
But of course, the US isn't just any country. It's the most powerful country in the world. And there's a fear that this time other countries might start to imitate. Argentina is thinking about pulling out. Even your neighbor, Indonesia, there have been discussions about whether it really makes sense to stand up for Paris commitments. Are you worried that this could all unravel?
Well, as I said, it's the right of any country to decide on how it wishes to proceed. As far as we're concerned, we still have we've had discussions with many countries, and we seem to be very like-minded in the importance of cooperation, whether it be on climate change or on promoting international law and adherence to a rules-based order. I think that many countries still have that approach, and we will work with them, and we will continue to work, and we just have to respect any decision made by another country on how they wish to proceed.
Now, looking ahead, back to the security field, I mean, in the Indo-Pacific, of course, we've been talking about the two-way alliance between the United States and the Philippines, and the US has alliances with various other countries in the region too. The Philippines has also been strengthening cooperation with Japan, but Japan's new prime minister, before he became prime minister, was on the record saying that he thought it was going to be time soon for there to be a full NATO-style alliance within Asia. Do you think that there's a logic to that? Is that a discussion that could kind of gather steam in the years ahead?
Well, it hasn't really. The idea hasn't really been seriously discussed at official levels. What we're focusing on the Philippines and even within ASEAN is strengthening our partnerships with other countries in the region, especially with Japan. Right now, we have a strategic partnership with Japan, which consists of both defense, security, and economic cooperation. And we're doing it also with other countries in the region. So I think as far as we're concerned, we want to continue the kind of partnerships that we're having. We're having bilateral or minilateral arrangements within the region, even trilateral. And I think at the moment that's the way that we're proceeding. So I don't think there's been any talk yet of having some kind of overarching alliance or something.
What about BRICS? I mean, BRICS has been growing. Would the Philippines ever look at that, or is that really perceived as being too, not just non-Western, but anti-Western?
We just haven't seriously considered in our policy circles about the possibility of membership of the BRICS. We haven't been invited, so but certainly, the door is never closed. If we think that there is a great benefit to be derived from joining any particular grouping, certainly we will study that seriously.
And just circling back now, finally, I mean, you're here in Europe, you've been meeting your European counterparts as well. There's been talk about a European-Philippines free trade agreement. Is it time to get serious about that? I mean, the Europeans certainly are keen to diversify their trade relations, partly because of concern about China, partly maybe also because of concerns about the dependability of the United States. What's the Philippines' perspective? How important would it be to be able to get a deal like that with the Europeans?
Oh, it's very important. In fact, we've already resumed negotiations with the EU for an FTA, Philippine-EU FTA. 2 rounds of negotiations have already been held. They've been very successful, productive, and a 3rd round is set for sometime in the middle of the year. So things are going well. And in all my talks with the individual EU countries, we have also sought their support.
So a prediction, like when do you think we might actually end up with a deal that could pass ratification?
Well, I hope that we can have a deal within the year, if that's possible, because I think it would bring great benefit, not only in economic terms, but in having a strategic value, cementing Philippine relations with the EU and the individual EU members.
Enrique Manalo, thanks for talking to DW today.
Thank you very much. Glad to see you.